Dear colleagues, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are. I'm Carolyn, the Corporate Communications Lead for the Musim Mas Group. Now, I lead branding, corporate and sustainability communications. A special thanks to those who have been following our social media posts and thank you for helping me with my KPIs. Now, while we wait for the others to join in, we will be playing a new video for Intercontinental Oils and Fats, ICOF, a member of the group. Thank you for taking time to be with us today.
How do you perceive value? Beyond appearance, is it reliability, precision, or innovation? At the core, value is the coming together of solutions and service. At ICOF, we create value for our clients by aligning our solutions to serve their needs. We supply sustainable palm oil and its derivatives to a vast range of clients who seek quality and value for their products. As a fully integrated palm oil company, we are able to control our supply from source to production. And because we are part of a large international workforce, you can be assured of the quality of our offerings. Just as how the mainspring of a mechanical watch is merely a contraption on its own, it needs to be in sync with other gears to make a valuable watch tick. And ICOF is here to serve that purpose, playing a pivotal role to ensure that all components fit and work together in synergy. By forming valuable partnerships we build together with our clients. By controlling our upstream supply to achieve consistent quality. By calibrating our operations towards a sustainable future with responsible solutions and actions. We assemble the gears together to ensure that our movement is as one. We are ICOF, your global partner, and we are able to deliver. How can we help you tick?
We hope you enjoy the video as much as we enjoy making them. Before we start, some housekeeping rules. If you have any questions during the presentation, please type them into the Q&A box in your Zoom control panel. We have 3 speakers today, my senior colleagues, Mr. Oliver Tichet and Mr. Robert Nichols. And this year, we have our new colleague, Ingi too. Olivier is the Director of Sustainability. He leads the implementation of the group's sustainability strategy. He works closely with our customers to identify synergies and partnerships. Olivier is active in the Roundtable on Sustainable Palm Oil, the High Carbon Stock Approach, and the Palm Oil Innovation Group. Rob Nichols is the General Manager for Programs and Projects, and he leads our Extension Services Program initiatives, including working with independent smallholders. Lastly, Ingi is the Senior Manager for Sustainable Supply Chain, and she leads our sustainability plan for our suppliers. She joined us from Asia Pulp and Paper in June 2021, and she spent more than 10 years close in the sector. We hope she will bring cross-fertilization of ideas for our team. So in terms of the agenda, the webinar can be divided into 4 main sections. We will start with a brief introduction about Musim Mas. Next, followed by the key trends that we think will shape our industry and therefore our work. The key highlights from our 2020 Sustainability Report. And finally, the progress towards a thriving archery landscape. And last, a special note on our projects and key partners. So let me start off with a brief overview of Musim Mas. For those who are new to the group, we started in 1970 as a soap factory. We developed the first refinery in Indonesia in 1970. And we went upstream in 1988. We went further downstream in 2003. And today we are a fully integrated palm oil giant with $7 billion US dollar of sales in 2020. So Olivia will start with the key trends and the key highlights of the sustainability report. Olivia, please.
Thank you, Caroline. Welcome everyone to this webinar. I hope you're all well. We are not off yet with the COVID, but I hope you're all dealing with it as best as you can. So first, a few points about sustainability, where we are, and about a little bit of sustainability policy. It might not be new for some of you, and hopefully it will be present to the minds of some others as well. Next slide, please. So first, a bit about our sustainability journey. It's often called a journey, which is true, but it's also about continuous improvement, increased commitment, improved transparency. We will achieve a deforestation-free, exploitation-free supply chain that remains inclusive, so that we are not just avoiding risk, but so that we are transforming our supply chain and contribute to transform our industry. So here's the journey of Musim Mas. I think most of you have seen it before. It started formally in 2004, when we were the first in Indonesia to join the RSPO. I will not go through each of the milestones, just to reinforce that it's about continuous improvement and finding ways to demonstrate this improvement. Next slide, please. I'll touch briefly on the sustainability policy, which was first published in 2014 and updated last year in September 2020. Next, please. So just to summarize about what is in the 2020 policy, I could easily say that there's a lot of the 2014 policy. We did not reinvent sustainability or change our core commitments. The initial policy was comprehensive, quite advanced, and we just tried to make sure that it was updated with the best knowledge now of today and expanded where need be. Our objective was and remains a responsible supply chain with a focus on improving livelihoods. Our workers, our contractors, our suppliers, independent smallholders, all are trying to improve their livelihoods and the future of their families, of their communities. We want them to succeed. It's in our best interest. As a company, it's our best interest as an industry and as part of a community. We also want them to participate in achieving a deforestation-free, exploitation-free supply chain and to have positive environmental and social impacts. So our policy applies also to them, except for a few requirements which only apply to us. So what is new in the 2020 sustainability policy of Musim Mas? First, coconut. It might be a minor product for us, but it is actually our second product. So the policy should logically apply to it as well. We have started work on coconut in 2021. We will continue in 2022 and further afterwards. Keep in mind that this is a smallholder's supply chain, very different from palm. But our experience in palm is helping us move forward faster in coconut. And we hope we'll be able to make good progress in the coming years. We also want to work on our paper and cardboard footprint. We use paper and cardboard in packaging. We must be able to find something to do there. I think there are initiatives in Indonesia. We want to work on that. Finally, we want to be better at transferring innovation in sustainability, and that in particular to smallholders, because we need to lift the sustainability floor for them. Same for the smaller producers. Next slide, please. Our sustainability policy, for those for whom maybe it's new, has 4 pillars. I'll describe them very, very briefly. The first pillar is about livelihoods. And livelihoods are not just about making money. It can also be about gender equality. It's about smallholders. It's about safety at work. The second pillar, it's maybe the most obvious. It's about delivering positive environmental impacts. And apart from our long-standing no deforestation, no peat, no fire commitments, it also includes our emissions. The third pillar is about relationships with our suppliers, but also across landscapes. And it's also the pillar which has to deal with grievances. How do we maintain the relationship? What's the value of maintaining a relationship in case of a grievance if we believe that it can bring change and if we believe it can bring remedy? The fourth pillar is about innovation. I'll take a few examples in that case. Obviously, there's better use of satellite imagery and data. How do we improve? In our case, how do we improve our risk assessment methods? And in particular, how do we use all that technology for smallholders? We have done that in 2021. We released our new risk management framework. But also, this innovation can be more practical and more a plantation thing, so to speak. For example, how do we select fertilizer to support our reduction of emissions in our plantations? That's innovation as well. But also, we have to think of how we work and how do we collaborate on designing and implementing, for example, a reporting system for certified and non-certified suppliers in a way that can be passed from the producer onto our customers so that they can get aggregated between their various suppliers. I'm sure some of you know what I'm talking about. It's about the Integrated Reporting Framework, the IRF, which is a very good initiative. It includes transparency, reporting, and verification, and so added value for all users. It's an excellent tool to bring trust and to bring progress in our industry. Next slide, please. And the next. So I'll touch now on a few trends. So I have no means to say that this is exhaustive. I just want to pick on a few topics and how we are going to address them. There are quite a few issues, so I'll just pick a few. So what's the current climate? We've seen COP26 and it was not a resounding success, but it was not a bad COP either. Highlighted a few things. Maybe foremost for our industry and for Musim Mas, methane. Musim Mas is quite uniquely placed there. We have methane capture mechanisms and biogas power generation on 16 of our 18 mills. And so we can turn what is a GHG, a big GHG source, into an electricity source, one that can be fed to the grid and benefit the rest of the community around us. So I picked 5 elements. So the first one is traceability, 5 topics. It remains a topic. It's not new, I agree, but it remains a topic. Our competitors on us were all racing to 100% traceability to plantation. Smallholders are the main issue to achieve 100%. And we know that the last few percents are going to be the difficult ones. Our approach to smallholders traceability is village-based with a very specific risk assessment method so that we can leapfrog the data collection limitations. We keep improving our risk assessment method, and the latest version, which was released earlier this year, incorporates precise shapefile of palm planted areas all across Indonesia. So we can gauge the risk as accurately as possible and engage our suppliers adequately. Also supports how we work with smallholders. We know where the palms are a lot more accurately than before. Second point on which I wanted to, the second topic I wanted to touch is E, the E in NDP, obviously. So social elements of NDP. Unlike deforestation and peat, it cannot be monitored using satellites. The main topics obviously are land rights, labor rights, can also be gender. And it can appear, I would say, everywhere. Social conflicts can be long to mediate. It's sometimes difficult to demonstrate positively that they are solved. What we are going to do, what we are doing is we are working on improving our tools to assess and support our suppliers, working both with Forest Peoples Program and with Verité, 2 reputable organizations. And I'll touch on that a little bit later. We remain open to reports when there are issues, social issues, and we are also scanning social media for news of conflicts and also for early signs. We're trying to find out on our own what is happening out there. That's not always easy. Third topic on which I wanted to touch is emissions. So we have worked already on our scopes 1 and scope 2 for our upstream operations, and we've committed to reducing them by 55% before 2025 on a baseline of 2006. And we are well on the way, and we expect to achieve our goal in time, possibly a bit earlier. Let's keep our fingers crossed. Scope 3 now is what we are working on at the moment. Our objective is being able to, scope 3, of course, what's the scope 3 for us? Scope 3 is our suppliers. And we are also the scope 3 of some of you here today, our customers. So in 2022, we're going to be working on our scope 3 emissions with the objective of being able to estimate our scope 3 emissions by the end of 2022. that might be optimistic. So let's say the end of 2022, early 2023, have something that will hopefully make sense. Fourth topic on which I wanted to touch is verification. By verification here, I mean third-party verification. So besides certification and besides transparency. So we already do it for our sustainability report, also for our chain of custody, our traceability to mills for raw material, and also for our IRF profiles. What's the purpose of that? Well, verification serves a purpose, and that purpose is to reinforce trust. Credible third-party verification based on mutually agreed, demanding protocols is a good combination because it preserves confidentiality. It's a delegation of a very specialized task to people who are professionals, and it delivers assurance. So it's a good system. And verification obviously is not going to go away, rather the opposite. My last point is politics. It's a broad concept, but I put actually two sub-points in that topic. The first one is net zero commitments. I put them there because they are very encouraged by governments all over the world. And we see companies beginning to make such pledges, net zero by 2050, typically. So we should ask ourselves, is this achievable? Net zero is a concept that involves offsetting and possibly a bit too much of offsetting, even if we consider the limit set for, let's say, for example, the SBTi. But nonetheless, we can use the net zero objective and our aspiration to reduce our emissions as much as possible and always feel that we have to go one step further, 1 more %, 1 extra point, 10 points. It has to keep motivating us and keep that goal, even if maybe like me, you're a skeptic and you think, no, we're not going to get there. Never mind. We have to keep that goal in view and say, what more can we do? What more and what more? Until we get to really the maximum possible and then push a little bit further. There are barriers, I would say, and these are things we still need to overcome. And in particular for transportation, we operate in rural areas, and we have to think about when are we going to see finally real solutions for rural transportation, electricity, hydrogen, I do not know, but something that will be adapted to rural areas and to plantations. So net zero targets can be supported by some initiatives. I mentioned in particular the SBTi, so the Science-Based Targets Initiative. I think it's the biggest one at the moment. Second item I wanted to mention on politics is the upcoming, is the current already EU deforestation due diligence regulation. So we've seen some, I'm sure we've all seen the latest version, which has been released and which is now with the Parliament, the EU Parliament. So it's a good concept on paper because it makes the buyers shoulder a lot more responsibility about deforestation. So the way the regulation is written, even though it's not yet final, I personally doubt that it will achieve all its goals. What I'm concerned about is that it would reinforce an avoidance approach to deforestation, which would mean focusing on producers who can already easily demonstrate their compliance. Typically, we're talking about larger, well-established companies, and that would also mean then disengaging with the rest, creating a bubble of compliance. And also it would mean something we are very concerned about, excluding smallholders. The implementation of this regulation is yet to come, so we'll see. I suspect it will be difficult. It will fall on the member states to implement, so we can expect some turbulence there, but maybe also some creativity. Let's hope. And another aspect that I want to underline of this regulation is that it is being felt as being about the EU telling the rest of the world what to do and not doing it so well. So maybe a missed opportunity for Europe. Let's hope the implementation will be practical. We have to note that there's also a similar initiative underway in the US. And we know that if deforestation is the start, the next logical step would be a due diligence for human rights. That's it for the trend. Next, please. So I will touch on the sustainability report of 2020. Next. So our sustainability report 2020 was published recently in September. We'll try to publish actually a bit earlier next year. This report has been verified by Ernst and Young. Again, it's about reinforcing trust, show that transparency is actually credible also. I'll present very briefly a few highlights of the sustainability report. I encourage you to read it and get in touch with us if you have questions. Next. So logically organized around the 4 pillars. So first, pillar 1. It's about livelihoods and about education in our operations and for smallholders either directly associated with us, scheme smallholders, or independent. It's also that's also part of the pillar 1. Rob will present more about independent smallholders a little bit later, and in particular, what we mentioned here as the last point, the newly established project with L3F. Next slide, please. Second pillar, so the one about positive environmental impacts. The last 2 years, so we highlight in particular fire, and I would say that the last 2 years have been quite good in terms of fire, in sense that there were very few fires. The risk is yet still present, and we know there's going to be other tough years. So we are not letting down our guard, and we're continuing being highly involved in training villages around us to keep their guard up as well and be ready in case there are fires. I also mentioned in here that we have avoided emissions thanks to our methane capture. As I mentioned, we've got 16 methane capture facilities. We're trying to make a dent in our methane emissions, and I think we are succeeding quite well. These facilities are quite efficient. I also mentioned in here, HEV and HES assessments. And so we have, if you remember, it was first HEV assessments, and now it's obviously always combined HEV, HES assessments. Plantations which had only HEV assessments went also and did HES assessments. The toolkit of the HESA is a very useful toolkit for us. Pillar 3, so it's about maintaining relationships. And maintaining relationships includes assessing and monitoring. So it straddles a little bit pillar 3 and pillar 4, I would say. One output of this pillar is the IRF profiles of our operations. I've touched on that earlier. We have also verified those profiles. So not only have we prepared the profiles, we've submitted them to third parties. The first year it was possible. The verification covered the profiles of our Indonesian operations. So kernel crushers, refineries, oleochem operations. We have also established profiles for the operations outside of Indonesia. If I look a bit at what we did actually in 2021 and not only 2020, we have published Deforestation and Peat Risk Management Framework. So like I said, it's an improvement on previous practices. So it's really about continuous improvement. We have also started work on developing better tools to assess labor and human rights. I'll talk about that a little bit later again. SPOT, which is at the bottom of the page, so the SPOT assessment. For 2020, we've been ranked 6 out of 96 palm companies. I'm glad to say that for 2021, we are 3rd. That was a bit of work, and we are happy to have progressed. Even though the standard every year gets a bit higher, there's more questions, they are assessed even harder every year. One thing which is not mentioned in here is also the CDP, the Carbon Disclosure Project, on which we've also progressed. It's a welcome recognition. I will not say we're not happy, but now we have to work even harder to maintain our position and to further improve. The last pillar is pillar 4. We have only 2 things there, and I will make a note on our own yields. So we have high yields in our own operations because of planting material, because of high standard of agronomy, and we continue to improve those yields. The point here, why is it included in this pillar? Because it's about how can we pass some of this on to, in particular, smallholders. Why to smallholders in particular? Because it's in our best interest. We want to increase their yields. If we want to see production continue to increase, we need to have smallholders who are better farmers, more responsible farmers, and who produce more. It's for their livelihoods. It's also for the better of the industry. Continued, one thing about pillar 4, which is not here because it's maybe broader even, is continued collaboration. Collaboration in the RSPO, in the HESA, and with the IRF. We really believe that collaboration upstream, downstream, across with our competitors is a real necessity. There's plenty of room for non-competitive collaboration. The palm industry is already quite transparent, quite advanced compared to some other industries, but I believe it needs to continue improving, and collaboration will take us there. I think that's the next step for us. Final slide on the sustainability report, very small snapshot. So I will pick on the third one, the 67% of the supplying mills to us who have complied the self-assessment tool. So until now, it was a manual kind of process. So now we're introducing an online self-assessment tool so that it's easier for our suppliers. And also it will help us analyze data a lot better, much easier to capture that data. On traceability to plantation, it's always increasing. We believe we are on track to achieving a fully traceable supply chain. Like I said, it's not the first 60, 70, 80%, which are the tough ones. It will be the last 3-5%. That's it for my part on the sustainability report and on the trends. I think now it's on for more exciting parts of this town hall. First, the Aceh report, and then the smallholders. Ingi, all yours.
Thanks, Olivier. Hi again, everyone. Thanks for being here today. I'm going to continue the presentations with the Aceh report highlights. Next slide, please. Thank you. Maybe before I start with the updates, I'm going to kind of touch a bit on why this particular landscape is important to Musim Mas. One of the key reasons why this particular landscape is important for us is that the Aceh province houses the Luzon ecosystem, which is one of the richest expanse of tropical rainforest here in Southeast Asia. It is actually spans across the province of Aceh and North Sumatra, and is currently facing a major threat of deforestation and a human-wildlife conflict, mainly due to the community and industrial growth in the area. As a Musim Mas, at the moment, although we don't have currently a huge supply base in the province, we do recognize that the value of the ecosystem to the surrounding environment and the community as well. We feel that by supporting the protection of the ecosystem, we feel like we can make a difference here. So the next few slides is going to be explaining about the strategy. We summarize our efforts to ensure that the NDP compliance of our supply base, while also at the same time contributing to the economic development of the smallholders in Aceh landscape. Next slide, please. So in November 2020, we launched the 5-year Aceh strategy covering 2020 until 2025. We separated mainly for 3 objectives covering engagement, assurance, monitoring, and response. In the next few slides, I'm going to explain one by one of the objectives and where we are at the moment. Next slide, please. We start with the objective A, which is the engagement. On this objective, we particularly covers our efforts in terms of the engagement in and the outside of our supply chain. We covers 3 main elements, which is the efforts around outreaching to producers and intermediaries to inform them on the NDPE. We work together in terms of the supply workshops and also for the Smallholder Hubs and Extension Services Program. At the moment, our progress on the targets is that we have achieved 100% of supplier mills have participated in our workshop. And as a result of that, 100% of the supplier mills in Aceh are committed to our NDPE policy. In terms of the smallholder works, we work together with a few of our global customers, with General Mills, for example. At the moment, there are 2 smallholder hubs have been established, one in Aceh Tamiang and Aceh Sikil, and the other one is in progress. We are currently working together with Nestle and AAK for establishing another smallholder hubs. Moving on to the objective B, which is the assurance. This covers 3 key elements, which is the risk-based traceability documentation, or TTP. The second one is the risk-based due diligence, and also the verification of compliance. The progress on the targets at the moment is that 77% of the risk-based traceability has been conducted for our suppliers' mills in Aceh. The next one is that we currently try to improve. Sorry, I'm still, could you go back to the previous slide, please? Still on assurance, yes. So on the bullet point number 2, we are right now in the process of developing the methodology to verify the GDP data that we are acquiring from our suppliers to ensure its accuracy. And that is going to be leading into the work that we're doing on bullet point number 3, which is the contributing to the NDP Risk Management Framework. The next one is that we also actively support the RADD platform work and the field verification in the Aceh landscape. And in terms of the grievance, 7 out of 9 of our suppliers' grievance cases has been verified by our in-house team. Moving on to the next objective, which is objective C, which is covering the monitoring and response. In this particular objective, we basically monitor the deforestation in the landscape and also just ensuring that we have a system in place to respond to those alerts accordingly. It covers 3 main elements, which is deforestation monitoring, landscape level mapping, and also outreach programs through collaborations with various stakeholders. Current progress is that in terms of the landscape level mapping, we are supporting a consortium to develop an integrated HCB HCSA landscape assessment. I'm going to be talking about this in a bit in the next slide. The next one is our collaboration with one of the satellite service providers, which is Satelligence. This is mainly to conduct a baseline assessment in Singkil. This covers collecting the baseline data to locate the planted areas of smallholders and industrial plantations in Aceh landscape. This information is later on fed into our smallholder programs to ensure that it is be more effective. The last one on this particular slide is that we are also supporting like Aceh Landscape Level Program with the Earthworm Foundations, focusing more on the trainings and engagements of our key stakeholders in Aceh Selatan and Subulu Salam. The last slide, just a bit of a highlight on the HCB HCS landscape assessment that we're supporting at the moment. We are currently a part of the consortium of the NGOs, technical organizations, and a few private sectors, which is working on developing an integrated HCB HCSA landscape level assessment for Aceh Tamiang and Aceh Timur. The work is currently led by a local NGO, the Yayasan Ekosistem Lestari. The objective of the assessment is mainly to obtain the baseline information and also to establish a cross-sector partnership, which is necessary to develop a sustainable land use and community production in the area. Currently, we understand that the work is progressing on the ground. It has acknowledged positively by the provincial government of Aceh, and currently the workshops of the stakeholders directly involving with the assessment is ongoing. We target for the project to be finalized around Q3 2022. I'm going to stop there for the highlights. Happy to take questions at the end of the session. Over to you, Pak Rob.
Okay, I'd like to welcome everybody along as well today. My name is Rob Nichols, and my role is working specifically with independent smallholders within our supply chain, as well as landscape programs. So we'd just like to move to the next slide, and we're going to start with a small extract of a video. We'll talk a little bit more about these later, but I think these are excellent videos just to give you a bit of a taste of some of the work we've done with smallholders and we continue to do. And some of this focuses on an excellent program that we worked with IFC on. Thanks.
Tulo tahun mau ulang tahun menjelang 4 tahun mak jalan 4 tahun. Mbak si anak hangu ama bapak seragi Roma kan halakon pada waktu itu jauh di kepala lorong doro perjolo. Jadi di bawah kepala lorong matahami dong rosong memang rolo kan cuma dang pala masuk sungi makan alana dang binoto pemenanga maksud na ning si masuk konon.
Dulu waktu mulai datang si anak nggak percaya kita kan dak.
Kalau dulu aku nggak percaya tapi belajar lah kita.
Iya.
Tentang memupuk kayak gini bu. Masa kayak gitu dia dibuangkan ke sana pupuk mopnya. Masa nggak ke pokoknya kan gitu.
Iya.
Kita lawan. Iya kayak gitu bu, cara memupuknya kayak gitu.
Semoga bermanfaat ya Bu.
Ya terima kasih. Langsung dia ajar atau dia mungkin diwatohoi. Nang malu do HP petani sekot tersung ni mak. Molo bungai dok asa atiro do guarni gulu ki. Udah tu nanti kan rumah ti terangga doa do warna. Tentang memupuk nih dihatai having so dong. Jadi buhama molo memupuk kamu mah songon sebagai arisan. Ini nama tuhami kan jadi orang dia buat itu songi mata bayi. Mero masih non ulado behami sadong songon mendabai hamuna asa terunggu nang tersongi do mahala kitong arisan bekam arisan non jika beruti mahal memupuk sehari sebulan bana tukar ini mah kediajar mah gudang maning ahani bala-bali nama nadohoti ba untuk kelompok pohon kurang pengalaman pak nakiwa ngape song na menentukan alan mani nulahon atan ni kelompok kan na latihan untuk kosong-kosong nina nulahon jadi iwa ngape menentukan keluarga pengalaman tentang mengurus kalapasa boy ini buat 75%. Molo na julot kina so arong gabi masuk bubuk sen kelompok memang dang hasil honing ma aleolo ma 800 sada 2 sada 1 nga ibatisian na tulus 1/2 hektar lurang 4 hektar sonari ngalo anggo ke sonari tong kan trek 2 sonari mulo biasa saja luma dapat kami mar 28 sungni Sabtu hari ima tabura kompokon ima pertabuna do mampak na kanin na ba ala ba panakinon ima mampak na dang pala dihepeng mudang pala sungnikan bu basiliana roha jadi badiajari mah tentang pengalaman na karejoon pak na mo tentang di kalompokon mabeno muna asa adong dosoroha muna ima malo marpung mahami kan pertemuan di minta dijawab marpung mahami pertemuan jadi adong macerita nami buha mardinas mahita song nakompak kan ulo song ni sudi ima tu kan siya na ngahanggapan betong sebagai keluarga nami ala naman ang sungon na pinilo tiwa na malo mga juro na dang pola sung na buru unang sungon mahamas ko ni dang roo siya noon sa ningo katulungan kapaapan ng buru suma holan na mangele katong iba na tuhami dang adong suguro mer jadi sayangi benyang gak mahir na keluarga na anak sendiri sungni imani ba dua
Great. I think you'll really enjoy if you have the opportunity to go to our website and have a look at some of the videos that we have there. There's a series of videos, and I think they really can open your eyes to the lives of smallholders, how we've worked with them and the programs that we've been involved with. So I'll just go to the next slide, thanks. As part of the journey that Musim Mas has undertaken with smallholders, one of the really groundbreaking and huge programs that we've been involved with is a partnership with the International Finance Corporation, or the IFC. It was developed as a smallholder program in 2015 and piloted in 4 Musim Mas mills. The program with IFC sought to improve the livelihoods of smallholders by integrating them into sustainable palm oil chains. Again, as I've said, you can find out more about a lot of the programs we've got and have worked on and continue to work on our website. And we'll be sharing this later so that you can connect to and have a look at some of the information there. This program, as I was saying, was really the beginning of our smallholder journey. And I think, this program with IFC was really innovative. It was a big change for IFC, the way they undertook this program, but the results have really been outstanding. Musim Mas has learned a lot from that program, and now we're in the stages. Even though that program is finished, it really motivated us as an organisation and further strengthened our already strong commitments to working with independent smallholders. So where did we go to from there? Next slide, please. Well, that program that we worked with IFC was excellent, and it's come to its natural end. But we had a lot of skills and ideas that were developed as part of that program. So we've moved forward, and we're moving forward into a thing called the Smallholder Hubs partnership. The main and I suppose innovative way that we're working with the Smallholder Hub is to work in district level government, to work alongside the plans that they have. Musim Mas has skills and strength around agronomy, around our NDP commitment, and other things that are related to agricultural aspects of the livelihoods of smallholders. What we do and what we have been doing is working to train the village extension officers who are based in the villages to give them better skills on good agricultural practices, financial literacy, give them better understanding and awareness of NDP policies and how they relate to the independent smallholders. And on top of that, we embed people in the community, field assistants, who are then there to assist the village extension officers build their own capacity, as well as go to the ground, meet the individual smallholders, and help them to learn and improve the practices that they're implementing on their blocks. So with this, one of the first areas that we've actually expanded and had a partnership with is General Mills. So we established a smallholder hub in Aceh Sinkhil, and to date, we've trained 75 village extension officers and over 310 independent smallholders, and that's growing every month. The second area that we've established a smallholder hub, and that is through the support of AAK and Nestle, has been in Subulu Salam. And to date, because it's only begun in November of this year, we've trained 28 village extension officers, and there's plans to train up to about 100 village extension officers, and then to cascade that training down to the independent smallholders. Roughly speaking, wherever we set up a smallholder hub, we want to train the village extension officers, and that can range from anywhere from 50 to 150, depending on the size of the district, and at least 1,000 independent smallholders over 2 years. Now, the key with this is independent smallholders. So these are smallholders who have got no ties, who are not ex-KKPR or plasma. So, really starting from possibly low levels of awareness on agriculture and other things that are important to the crop, as well as to the supply chain. So we roll out these activities in high priority villages. We want to target the high priority villages, and it could be a high priority because it's close to an important ecosystem, like the Lusa ecosystem. It could be because it's close to a waterway or a swamp area that has high ecological values. We're also looking at how we provide satellite tracking reports on deforestation, because obviously what we want is to assist the smallholders to intensify, to improve their yield without expanding further. So this is a really key element. And as part of that, what we really need to look at is to assist smallholders to address themselves as small business operators. You know, it's not a charity. We want to see that they're actually looking at what they do as a small business and how can we improve the results for them. Then I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. So next slide, please. So the next thing that we're really pleased to announce at the moment is, you know, some of the partnerships that we've got. And one of them is with UOB, and we're one of 2 companies granted a green trade finance facilities under the Green Finance Industry Task Force Green and Sustainable Trade Finance and Working Capital Framework. Another example of partnerships with financial institutions is the MUFG Bank, and we're doing a digital finance and financial learning app, Agrion, with Agrion as well, to promote financial inclusion amongst independent smallholders. So this is a joint effort between Musim Mas, MUFG Bank, and Bank Damanon Indonesia, and IAPS. And the platform will soon be made available to independent smallholders enrolled in our smallholder programs. Now, there's a couple of reasons why we think this is really important. You know, we want to access modern technology. We want to be relevant by using new technologies and innovation, and to reach out and support more independent smallholders. But as I said before, what is really important is that we start to give better financial decision-making skills to independent smallholders so that they can actually plan better their small business. Because until they see themselves as small business operators, it's very difficult for them to break that mold. You know, they really need to have that mindset. So that's something that we're really firm on and we're continuing to work on. Next slide, please. Another major and big announcement we've had just recently is the Livelihoods Fund. So this is really, you know, a big step. We've got a 10-year partnership with Livelihoods Fund for family farming, L3F. And it's a partnership between Mars, Danone, L'Oreal, and SNB as the implementer on the ground. So some of the key things that we're going to be working on is to regenerate 8,000 hectares of palm farms in degraded land areas while restoring an additional 3,500 hectares of local biodiversity. We want to aim to help at least 2,500 palm oil smallholders in North Sumatra, covering the Musim Mas supply chain, or supply chain shed. Now, the program will introduce regenerative agricultural practices and replanting with certified seedlings to smallholders. We really want to work on improving crop yields and reduce total planted area, and use non-palm species to restore buffer zones in fragile ecosystems. Again, with all these partnerships that, you know, we're undertaking, whether it's a Smallholder Hub or this huge project with Livelihoods, we're looking to be transformative, but also I'd just like to acknowledge that the support that we're getting from partners, because it's not always just about money. It's about a commitment. It's about learning. It's about what are the challenges that smallholders have to face, and what can we offer? What can we do to help them stay in the supply chain so that they remain sustainable and self-sustaining as business operators? So we think this is an important way forward. Our partnerships with those other players and stakeholders in the supply chain, as well as with district level government. Again, I would encourage everybody to have a look at our website under the sustainability section, and we've got an area there that covers a lot of the work that we're doing with smallholders. So thanks very much, and I'll look forward to any questions that you may have later. So thank you. Back to you, Caroline.
Thanks. Actually, I'll pick up from there, Rob. So thank you very much, Rob.
Yeah, thanks.
That's okay. I'm the other Caroline in a way, at least for today. I'll talk about a few other projects, but first I will reinforce something maybe that Rob has said about our projects with smallholders. They're not CSR. In here, we're talking about more about investments. I've mentioned that earlier, but I really want to reinforce that our projects with smallholders are really investments in the future. On the production side, we want to see more production. We want to continue increasing the size of our company if we can, and we will need deforestation-free oil palm. So we will be happy to get it from smallholders who have intensified, who have increased their yields. And it's also about how we can collaborate locally. How do we change landscapes? And so again, these programs are not CSR, they're investments. Also, I'll make a quick note on the fact that palm is a long cycle crop. It's a perennial crop. We are a plantation company as well as being a refiner. We can commit to long term. And so that's why that project with livelihoods, like Rob said, one of the main items that's really exciting for us is the commitment over 10 years. And it's really great to see companies making that commitment. We need, anyways, we're very happy to collaborate with anybody on the downstream side to connect with the upstream side. The recognition it brings for the upstream players, for the growers, is immense, and for the local governments is really immense. So I'll pick on 3 other projects which I wanted to highlight. The first one is with the Forest Peoples Program, and it's about the HESA. It's piloting the HESA Social Requirement 13. I'm not going to get into what this is, but just to say that we are working there on the HESA toolkit, and we are collaborating there with FPP. Why is that so? Because we both are HESA members, and that's the key point. We both are HESA members. We want to see the HESA toolkit to be as practical as possible so that it can be adopted even more broadly. It's a good toolkit. It's even though it's been used mostly by our industry, palm, and a bit by pulp and paper as well. Let's not forget it's not designed for our industry. It's designed much more broadly. It's a very good, very all-inclusive toolkit for tropical areas. But going back to the Social Requirement 13, we want to make sure that it can be practical, and so it needs testing. It's still new, and we decided to rise to the task together, producer and NGO together, and see how we can test it, and how we can see how it's really implemented, and how we can tweak it better so that it can be easily implemented, verified, and adopted broadly. Second project on which I would like to touch is the project with Verité. And that's about improving, that's something I mentioned earlier, how we can assess our suppliers for their labor practices in their operations. Why? Because we need to find better ways to assess the labor situation of medium or even small businesses, small companies who are our suppliers and who are not, let's say, RSPO certified in particular. We have to find a way that is practical, that is adapted to such smaller businesses, so that we capture the right information that's valuable for us, but that will then also help us give something valuable to the suppliers in a way that's not too difficult for them to handle. And that does not require always teams moving around. We have a lot of mills, a lot of suppliers, including a lot of small suppliers in our supply chain. We have to find the right tools. So also, I'll make a footnote on that one. I'll link it to something else, which is the human rights due diligence that might arrive one of those days. Having such a tool will hopefully help us and others to have a better way of carrying out such due diligence. We really need to develop those tools, less intrusive possibly, but that really pick the right information in a way that is reliable and that can be verified afterwards. Third project is something a bit less new maybe, and it's about RADD, and the radar alerts for detecting deforestation. It's something which was launched 2 years back, if I remember correctly. We were co-founders of this initiative, or at least supporters of it financially and using it. And keep in mind that what is important with this initiative by the World Resources Institute, WRI, is that, and Intelligence, actually, it's that the collaborative side of it is the most important one. As far as detecting better deforestation, look, there's going to be a new satellite next year and better software and so on and so forth. That's possibly never ending. But what is really important is how we collaborate. How do we have a non-competitive collaboration to verify alerts and to have a system which is adaptable again. It can be in one place done by the local government. It can be done by a consortium of NGOs somewhere else, including also by companies. The key being, how do we then share information? How do we collect information that is trustable? And how do we then share it in a way that allows to maintain some confidentiality for some information, but that will still allow for sharing? And that can be then, that means that then we can have a very uniform verification of alerts on very large areas, because you have multiple actors doing it in a collaborative manner. I think it's been a common theme in this today. It's really collaboration. How do we foster, how do we make it so that we can have collaboration? How do we reinforce trust, or how do we build the trust that will bring good collaboration. I strongly believe that initiatives like RAD can be precedent that will enable even further collaboration. On that hopeful note, that will conclude our presentation for today. Thanks a lot for your attention. Now we have a questions and answers session. I hope you will have good questions, possibly challenging questions for us. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Olivier. It's time for Q&A. If you have, please type the questions in the Q&A box in the Zoom control panel. If you want to be anonymous, you please feel free to tick the chat box. And I can see we have 2 questions for now. Perhaps I can start off the first question to Olivier. I think we mentioned about captured methane gas earlier. Can you perhaps point out to the group what is being done with the captured methane and our overall strategy around methane?
Yes, it was not Captain Methane. Captain Methane is definitely not a superhero. That's one thing for sure.
I'm thinking of Captain Planet, sorry.
How do you call that? So what happens to the captured methane? It's very simple. We burn it, but we burn it in a way that's useful. It goes into power generation, effectively. And that's the thing about methane. You can, so it's actually not, let's be a bit more precise. What is captured effectively is biogas. So you have on the lagoons, or you can use tanks as well. We use mostly covered lagoons if you have a longer retention time. I mean, that's a separate discussion. But you capture the biogas. There's a high concentration of methane in the biogas. You can then slightly clean it in a way, scrubbing, if memory serves me right. You scrub it, so you clean it a bit, and you make it cleaner so that it can then go into generators which are specifically designed to run on biogas with a high percentage of methane. And these are quite fancy equipment. So the capex, the total capex of that can be a bit overwhelming for certain players. Musim Mas has decided to go all the way with methane capture. So anywhere that we only do not have it on 2 mills, and it's because it's technically very difficult on those mills to have it. Otherwise, they would have methane capture and cogeneration and generation afterwards. So that's what we do with that methane. What's the benefit? The benefit is that you go from methane, which is in itself a very high GHG value gas, and you not only recuperate energy out of it and power, but you also transform it into CO2. And CO2 is a GHG, but a much, much lower impact GHG. There, I'm not sure of my memory, but I think it's a difference of a factor of 34. I'll trust, if somebody has a better number, I'll trust your word. I'll take your word for it. But it's that kind of ratio. So that's what we do with the methane, and that's the benefit of doing that. Thanks.
Thank you. Perhaps you can share with the group that with the emphasis on COP26, what do you think is the industry's opportunity with methane too, in light of
it's not only so the industry has an opportunity to have a better impact. It has to be recognized as well. At the moment, if you capture methane, it's mostly recognized for the biofuel market. So let's see. It would be nice to see the food industry say we want to buy low GHG palm products. That could be interesting. Maybe that would then promote more deployment of methane capture equipment. Again, let's not be blind to the fact that it's pretty high capex. So it requires significant investments, which might not always be available for every player. There must be a business case behind it. Currently, there's a possibility to sell to the grid, but it's not super attractive for everybody. So the banks might not be fully behind it. So let's see, maybe with COP26, with the impetus of COP26, there will be more interest and even more support from the banks.
Right, thank you. Yeah, perhaps the next question goes out to Ingi. Perhaps you can explain, I think the question is about, can you tell us more about coconut activities with smallholders, or perhaps you can explain as well what we're doing around coconut right now. Yeah.
Right, great. Thank you, Caroline, for the question. I think at this stage, it's still at the very early stage of our plan in addressing the coconut sustainability aspect in our supply chain. So at the moment, we're starting to get to know more about our supply base in terms of the copra supply base and the coconut supply chain as well. We're also starting to map out the existing initiatives around coconut, or what is out there, what are the platforms around collaboration, and also in recognizing, what are the current challenges faced by our suppliers on the ground, and also in terms of the potential intervention that we can do to improve the sustainability of our coconut supply chain. Our target in terms of this is to get to develop some sort of a concrete roadmap by next year, and then start to engage our suppliers and our customers as well in terms of realizing that targets around coconut sustainability. Hope that answers the question. Thank you.
Thank you, Ingi. Yeah, perhaps we would like to add that we know that the bulk of the coconut smallholder are made out of smallholders, and that we also think that our current work with the oil palm smallholders will put us in a good state to prepare us once we figure out where the smallholders lie in our supply chain. Yeah.
Yes, definitely. So the work, so like you mentioned, the work that we've done in the palm oil supply chain, especially related to the smallholders, that experience will feed into the work that we're doing in the coconut supply chain as well.
Right. Okay, great. Thank you. Perhaps the next question goes to Olivier about there's this question on, is there any plans for us to go further by providing specific segregated grade of palm oil or palm kernel oil derivatives, or even mass balance for that matter?
That's a difficult one. I mean, I think the derivatives discussion on segregation for derivatives is always, the roadblock is always the volume. How do we guarantee the volume to feed the factories? On that one, I think our industry has been very efficient, has built very large facilities for the oleochems, and I'm afraid those facilities at the moment are too big, and the way they operate does not allow, let's say, batch processing. If there was a system to do batch derivatives, I would think it would be possible. At the moment, every time we raise it with our colleagues in the oleochem, they throw their arms up in the air and say, why didn't you tell us that 10 years or 15 years ago when we designed the factory? And now it's just too complex to change. And apparently our competitors have the same issue. So it seems we should have convinced the engineers first about sustainability, and not the sustainability people first.
Yeah, but what about for mass balance? Are there ways, perhaps for other forms of not just certification but verification for the supply chain?
Possibly, but and again, for mass balance, yes, for mass balance, you can at least know, technically, you know what are the yields from raw material to end product. But I understand the concern or the request there is always, how do we make sure that the product we hold in our hand is the one that was produced sustainably, or that was really coming from a segregated source. And at the moment, the difficulty is really still purely technical. And it's a shame, because we have those products; they do exist, but technically, I think there still is a limitation there. So mass balance definitely possible, yes. And by the way, I'll just make a note on mass balance. For those who watched the RSPO GA, there was a very interesting resolution around mass balance, the RSPO mass balance system, to ask about. The resolution is asking the RSPO to look into the mass balance again, and to try to see how it can be improved. And it was very interesting because it was presented by a company called Croda, so which is downstream, and they made a very strong appeal. And there was a question as well as, why do we need mass balance? And they reminded everybody that it was mass balance that made it possible for industries like Croda and for their customers to get into sustainability and to start buying sustainable products. So we have to keep that balance always in mind. It might not be yet the perfect system, but what does it deliver that is positive? It pulls the industry, and that's something we have to keep. We have to keep strongly in mind when we think about the imperfection of the mass balance system. Thanks.
Perhaps I think the next question goes to you too,
Oh my word.
Yeah. I think this specific question is about like what are our plans to improve assurance outside of the RSPO? I think we have to break this down to question, right? What's our stance of assurance, and then how we see RSPO certification going forward, and what we think we can complement it. Thank you.
That's a good point. It's so like you said, two different things. One on the RSPO. So RSPO is one good way. On assurance, I would say you have various levels. As we discussed, you have the IRF, and we're very good. We're very committed to the IRF. Why? Because it's a good way of showing what's in a supply chain and aggregating. To me, that's also the point. The assurance itself is good, but it's also then how you can share that information. And so using the IRF is a good system. Why is it good as well? Because the IRF includes a verification process. So you can self-report, and that will show on your profiles, or you can verify, and that will also show in your profile. I mean, as soon as the IRF has designed a profile that allows to show that it's verified. But I think some of us went a bit faster than the IRF itself. So that's one good way, I would think, because it's correct that there is the RSPO and there is the rest. But I think the RSPO has shown the way, and we have to find ways to give some assurance on the rest. And that would be a way for me. Already we start with we can start with the IRF to give good visibility and have at least a tool that tells us how much of the volume included in that goes into a certain facility is already delivering on no deforestation, no peat commitments, and coming up soon, hopefully, on an exploitation aggregator as well.
But perhaps for some of us in the group who may not understand what you talk about, we talk about assurance, we talk about verification, and what's the difference with and certification too, right? There's so many processes involved. It's a bit confusing for some of us. Yeah.
That's correct. So certification, to make it extremely simple, I'll focus on certification. Certification is against a very set standard. So you have a standard and you get certified against that standard. Assurance is more about what you are claiming, and you verify if your claims are correct. In a nutshell, that's what I would take. I see there's actually a note, somebody mentioning that the RF will not be appropriate for the EU due diligence. That's correct, actually, and not many things will at the moment, and that I think is a bit of an issue. So let's wait until there's the ways of implementing are made known to us, because I think that everybody is still waiting for that white smoke and see how we're going to implement. Very nice regulation, but how do we make it work?
Perhaps one question for Rob. We talk about assurance. Olivia talked about assurance, and someone in the audience also asked about there's assurance for the suppliers and our supply base, then also assurance for smallholders. How do you think this could look like, given the work that we are doing? And do you think that there are current processes that actually leads us there, even within the RSPO or the working groups?
At the moment, we're working with a number of farmer groups to get RSPO, or we already have RSPO certification. There's 4 farmer groups. We have another 3 groups, subgroups from there, that are ISPO certified, and we're moving towards more certification schemes for some of the smallholders supplying to some of our mills directly. Now, while certification is one way of doing that, a lot of it is about the processes that we go about training on good agricultural practices. So not everyone has to be certified to be sustainable. What's most important is the implementation of sustainable practices. So to verify that, it's going to take time. We have a huge number of independent smallholders within Indonesia. And that's why we see where we work with district level government and that we have village extension officers assisting us in this work, that we can get some assurity, especially around no further deforestation and linking in with the government programs that put a limit on further expansion or protected areas. So I think it's a hand-in-hand approach with the local level government, district level government, working into the national action plan. as well as continued certification schemes that we are working towards, whether it be RSPO internationally or Indonesian sustainable palm oil.
Thank you, Rob. Perhaps the next question goes out to Ingi. The question is about pre-competitive collaboration on human rights monitoring along the palm oil value chain. What are we doing? And then perhaps we can also help guide the audience through at the top level, right? What are we doing for human rights for our supply chain, and then how we can ensure that we work with the different stakeholders. Thank you.
Thanks, Caroline, for the question. I think, I think Olivia mentioned it also earlier in terms of the human rights. It's something that right now the industry is looking into closely monitoring this particular aspect because it's a bit more challenging compared to monitoring the deforestation, which might be using various technology that is available at the moment. From our side at the moment, we've tried to approach this from various angles. One of the things that we're doing, I think it's in one of the slides as well. We are engaging currently with Verite to try to identify what is the system that we currently have right now in Musim Mas, and also to try to find improvements that we can do in terms of the human rights monitoring in our operations and also in our supply chain. And I think in another aspect of that is in terms of the community and land rights. We were working together with FPP at the moment in the connection of trying to trialing the implementation of one of the social requirements from the HCSA standard. So there we were looking into that aspects as well. In answering your questions around the collaborative actions around this particular space is on, perhaps I could mention the IRF social platform that we're working on right now. So we are taking a part in the discussion as well. What I can update to the platform is that right now there's a continuous discussion around the most effective way and indicator to kind of grasp and monitor the implementations of the human rights, especially labor in terms of the operation and supply chain. We are also looking into piloting the IRF framework in social once the framework is ready to be trialed.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. Okay, right. I think there's a question on traceability. Perhaps to Olivier, could you guide the audience, right, on our work on traceability and how we collaborate with the farmer groups in view of the due diligence laws and how important traceability will be to that debate? Yeah.
Yes, good point there. And if you remember, I said that the upcoming EU due diligence regulation, I find it exclusive to smallholders. That's exactly the point. And not only to demonstrate their practices, even though the cutoff date is a pretty fair cutoff date, but keep in mind that you have to submit the way it's written at the moment for every shipment, full traceability for absolutely everything. And that poses a problem if you have a lot of smallholders in your supply chain. How do you gather that information? How do you determine what goes into what shipment and how you declare? So either you declare your entire supply base all the time, then you would need to know every smallholder's location, be able to supply a map of every single smallholder. Our approach is dual, if you want, or we have two levels in our approach. Smallholders in our direct supply base, or the ones delivering to our own mills, we have mapped. We send our teams. That takes very long, and we cannot rely on a database of land titles, which is a key issue, and not only in Indonesia, in many countries, the land title database. How do you have land titles, and how do you then ensure that this is in a database that can be used by, I'm not going to say everyone, but that can be used on if there is a need and if there is agreement. So that is a main issue. So for us, our approach is, like I said, on our own mills, and for some of our suppliers, we know they can map, we can map, and some of them can map smallholders as well. The vast majority, you will not have maps of the individual block. So what do? We approach at the village level. We have that risk management framework, which we've been improving and we continue improving. and on which we do village level traceability, but we overlay with planted palm areas so that we can gauge the risk. So in theory, if the EU were practical, I would say, they would also take such an approach, because you can see if the area of palm in a certain village when has it been planted. So you do not need to go to the individual farmer. You actually would be better off saying that village, actually, yes, that village is past the cutoff date, it's in the right kind of land, it is compliant, instead of requiring every block and to be verified. It's going to be nightmarish. Like I said earlier as well, I do not know how it can be implemented. I mean, I see how it can be implemented. Don't put smallholders in your supply chain. That's the easiest way. But that's definitely not a desirable outcome. And that contradicts the EU policy in reality. So I think something is not right there, basically. But to say, so like I said, for us, to either the perfect traceability, or we take the village-based approach with a risk management framework, which is precise enough that we know where there is risk or where there is possibly even non-compliance. Thanks.
Actually, there's another question for you. It's about whether the industry have the ability to capture carbon dioxide, CO2, in the way that the palm oil or palm derivatives are produced.
That's a good one. That one, I must admit, so far I've not thought about that. So I'd be curious, and we can see who's asked the question. I'd be curious to continue that discussion separately, because it's not something that's known to me. I'd be interested to see what potential we have in addition to what we're doing today. Today, we are really focusing on where we know are the big emissions. So you have the land use change, which is one, and you have the methane from the lagoons at the mill level. So we're really focusing on that, and we've really reduced that to the minimum. So I'd be curious to see. I'm trying to think how we could reduce further, at least the products themselves. We can definitely improve the processing, always improve, find cleaner sources of energy. I hope they will become more and more available, but to see how the products themselves can help, that I must admit, I'd be curious to have a further discussion on that.
Okay. Perhaps the next question to Ingi. Why is the Aceh landscape important? Why are the smallholder hubs important too? Both in terms of the sustainability and commercially for us.
Thanks. So go back to the Aceh landscape. I think from our side, we, as a responsible producer, of course, we have responsibility not only to our current suppliers, but also to the environment where they produce their FFB. Go back to the loser ecosystem. So we think that it has a very important and significant impact to the surrounding environment and the community sustainability as well, right? So we were thinking that by supporting a program intervention in terms of the smallholders in the particular landscape, it's going to be supporting in mitigating the impact of the climate change in the area, and then also as a way also to provide opportunity for our global customers and global stakeholders to take part in the initiative. Because the landscape is huge, the impact is also quite significant, and the area of work is also offering many line of work for collaboration. So we're opening opportunity for our global stakeholders as well to take part in the work and to kind of promote the impact and the collaboration that they do in the platform as well. Thanks.
If I could add just a couple of comments to that, thanks, Ingi. It would be very easy for us just to say, well, look, this is too difficult. I think it's really important what Olivia had said about inclusiveness. So we actually are trying to be proactive, where we could just try and say, okay, well, we're not going to buy from there. We're actually trying to be part of the solution. And by withdrawing isn't being part of the solution. So, we're really looking to try and be innovative. We're really, happy with the support we've got from the partners. We're prepared to put thought and effort into this as well. So it's really about let's try and make a difference rather than ignore the problem.
I have perhaps the last two questions. This is a long one. It's about whether our industry will face, given the conversations around climate and climate resilience and net zero commitments, do you see that we will go into a process where our critics and stakeholders will demand carbon zero certified palm oil? So Olivier, yeah.
Yes,
it's a long question.
Yeah, but it's not a bad question. We talked about that, the net zero commitments. So are we going to see demand for a carbon zero certified palm? I think today, possibly not. Again, zero, we have to be clear on the definition of zero. Is it a net zero, or is it, so net zero means at least up to 10%, let's say, of offsetting, for example, if you look at some of the standards out there. So I do not think it's going to come just now. Again, if you look at what's happening in the biofuel sector, you obviously have an interest and you have a better demand for low GHG value oil. So that might become as well eventually a factor in the food industry. Why not? Again, it would mean that we would be able to measure the emissions of every ton of palm oil produced. We are not there yet. It still is only small portion of the production. It's about what? It's about 10% of the world production. Less than that, yeah, about 10% possibly that is certified at the moment with a standard that really allows for, or at least with an internationally recognized GHG calculation method. So I think we're quite far from it. But again, are we going to see more requirements and commitments on how do you measure and how do you reduce your emissions? I think that should come. Yes, it would not be. It would make sense. What I hope is that it will not be limited to palm, but that it would be across the vegetable oils. And let's compare apples to apples, or oil to oil, let's say, and on real long-term studies, or using similar tools, so we can have a real good idea of the values. And let's see what happens then. So that's what I would say on the emission side.
So in addition to the question, so what about forced labor-free palm oil? But when it comes to forced labor, does that mean it's, what do you think in terms of whether it's Malaysia and Indonesia and all commingled together? Yeah.
Yes, so the palm industry is very different worldwide. If you follow the RSPO debate, it's quite interesting to see the definition of a smallholder. You look at Central America, smallholders have 25, 50 hectares. That's not a definition we would accept in Indonesia or Malaysia, for example. So you have a variety of situations in the palm oil sector, and that's just our sector. Forced labor free, well, effectively today, it's already, if it's RSPO certified, it should be by default considered forced labor free. The conventions also, if you look at the various countries where palm is produced, definitely Indonesia, Malaysia, Indonesia has ratified the 8 core conventions of the ILO. Malaysia, I think now is at 6 or if not 7 already. So the laws are there. It's a matter of implementation. It's also a matter of, I would say, distinguishing breaches by individuals from systemic breaches or systemic breaches by the industry, let's say. Is the palm industry relying on forced labor as a rule? Certainly not. Are there breaches? Can there be breaches? They can be. Who is responsible for the breaches? It might be certain companies, I'm not saying. There are certainly issues every time you consider using foreign labor on a large scale, and in particular, lower skilled labor. There's always a risk of exploitation in that. And the numbers are big enough that you will find people who have been exploited. And there should be a way to find that and to remedy to that. And it has to be commensurate to the fault, I would say, and who is responsible for that fault. I'm not trying to say that the companies or the plantation companies are never responsible. That's definitely not the point. But we have to always find a remedy which is commensurate to the problem. I think there's a lot of efforts being made. It's not in the best interest of our industry to use forced labor. That would be an extremely short-term vision, and that's not the kind of business in which we are. This being said, we know there needs to be more work done on how we can assess correctly, accurately, and fairly the labor situations in the smaller producers, even in the mid-sized producers. So I know there's another question about that. Yes, there needs to be more work to be done there. And I think Ingi has answered that already. Yes, there is plenty of work to be done there. We've had for a long time a lot of focus on deforestation, peat. We seem to have left behind a little bit the workers and possibly communities. We need to react to that. We need to rebalance that and bring the same level of importance to those issues. And I strongly believe there's a lot of collaboration to be done there. There is work already being done. Issues have to be outlined, but also solutions. How do we better assess? How can we have a better vision of what's in our supply chain? How we can pass that on with a high level of confidence to other parties as well? Sorry, that was a long answer. Maybe it was a long question, so a long answer.
No problem. I think I'll end off a lighthearted one. Rob, to you.
Oh, thank you.
What's your wish from Santa for Christmas, now that we are almost the end of the year?
Really, I just hope that the whole COVID situation, the whole issue sort of can move on, that we can all come back to some form of normality, because so many of our projects rely on boots on the ground. A lot of our projects have been slowed down because of that. But also, it has had a great impact on the economy of a lot of people. So, not just our sector, but the whole world. So, yeah, we really just hope that COVID situation improves and that we can get out there and really continue to do what we do and meet a lot more people and work with a lot more smallholders in 2022.
Thank you, Rob. Okay, so we have about 1 minute left. Ingi, the question goes to you. What's your wish for 2022 since you joined us new and so far?
Yes, thanks, Caroline. I'm kind of new into the industry, so I think for the next year, so being here for 6 months is a lot of, I recognize there's a lot of platforms and work stream along multi-stakeholders collaboration and innovation. So there's going to be a lot exploration around that space as well in the next year. If we go back to what Pak Rob was mentioning about COVID restrictions, I was hoping that, if it's going to be cooling down a bit next year, there's going to be a lot more meetings and discussions and brainstormings towards multi-stakeholder collaborations as well. That's my wish for next year.
I certainly wish to see you too in person.
That would be nice.
And we have come to the end of the webinar. Thank you all for joining us here today. We wish you Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, and may we see each other in person soon, hopefully.
Indeed,
so
that's the best we can wish for next year. See you all soon, well, and in very good form next year.